Hey everybody, welcome back to NickyT.live. I'm your host Nick Taylor, and today I'm not hanging out with one but two people from GitHub. I'm hanging with Gregor Martynus, who's a staff software engineer over there, and Francis. I apologize, I forgot to ask how you pronounce your last name, but is it Batac?
That's right. Or you could say Francis Fuzz. Either work.
Okay, or Francis Fuzz. Perfect. Yeah, and Francis is a senior software engineer over at GitHub. Before we get into things, for folks that might not know either of you, would you mind just kind of giving a little kind of what you've been up to or what you do over at GitHub? Because I'm actually curious too. I don't know all the things you do over at GitHub. I guess you could go ahead first, Gregor, if you want to.
Sure. Hi, I'm Gregor. I've been contracting for GitHub for a while. I created the JavaScript SDKs. That's been, for several years, kind of my little side gig. And eventually they hired me full time. It's been 2.5 years now. And I worked on different parts of GitHub since then. And most recently, very recently, I kind of helped the Copilot Extensions team and build out the SDK that we will talk about today.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, no, that's great. And for yourself, Francis, you mind just saying a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Nick. And thanks, Gregor, for having me on. My name is Francis, pronouns he, him. I'm an engineer at GitHub. I've been with GitHub since 2015 and I've worked on all sorts of different parts of GitHub, including the API. And nowadays I work on new user experience for onboarding and retention. And recently I became a contributor to the Copilot Extensions SDK. So been landing a couple of PRs here and there with Gregor, and Gregor and I have known each other in the Octokit days. And so, just glad to be here and to learn together.
Cool, cool. Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing. Uh, I've definitely been a consumer of some of the things you've worked on. We use the Octokit over at OpenSauced. I did drop a link to the Copilot Extensions SDK. But before we even get into that, I'm just going to switch us to pairing view real quick. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen here. Recently, and I will open it on my screen, there was an announcement that the Copilot extensions, I believe they're in beta now. Is that correct, Gregor?
Yeah, they are in public beta now, so everyone can go and try it out as of a few hours ago, I think.
Okay, that's awesome. Here, I'm gonna just go ahead and load that up here. Okay, cool. Is this, yeah, here's the public beta. So folks can check that out. I dropped it in the chat. And I guess, like, I feel like probably anybody who's in the programming workspace or the GitHub ecosystem or, or VS Code, all those things, they're probably familiar with what GitHub Copilot is. It's like this AI Copilot to help you along in whatever task you're doing. I was wondering if you could, in your own words, Gregor, kind of just touch on what the Copilot extensions are and kind of what it might open up for people.
Sure, I hope I do it justice. Just I'm kind of new to the field myself,
Okay.
and there's an amazing team behind it who did the actual work of the back end. Just worked on the front end.
Okay.
But Copilot started out by like a coding assistant, so you kind of got like a really good type ahead as you were typing in VS Code and also now other IDEs and coding environments. And since then, it expanded and it keeps expanding to other places, including chat. So you can actually interact with it directly. You can ask it questions about the current repository you're looking at, or in VS Code about the current file you're seeing. For things like, hey, like, do you see a bug here, or can you help me write a test for this? And now with Copilot extensions, it's basically Copilot is becoming a platform. And as an engineer, who already spends so much time on GitHub.com and or my code editor, it helps me to work with all the services that I need for my day-to-day work without having too much context switching, which is
Yeah.
really, really cool. I can write from wherever I have the chat, like integrate directly and ask a question. Like for Sentry, I think they have a nice integration extension, sorry,
Yeah.
where, that I can basically interact with it and ask it to create new issues or tell me what the latest alerts are for and stuff like that without me needing to leave
Okay.
github.com or my code editor.
Okay. So it's not even, I mean, obviously you can ask questions and stuff, but it's more than that. With the extensions open, you can do kind of CRUD operations potentially for certain services, like you were saying, like create a new issue in Sentry. So it's kind of like, I guess, whatever people want to do with their extension, I guess, is kind of, I guess, the best way to say it. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, sky's the limit. We are a big community of engineers, and we will come up with a lot of interesting ideas and use cases for this that GitHub probably couldn't even imagine. So we are all very curious to see what people will build with this new capability of the GitHub platform.
Yeah, no, cool. And you were mentioning the SDK. I'm gonna drop a link to that again in the chat. And so this is something you started to work on, and uh, I think you had mentioned recently, Francis, you had been contributing to it as well.
Yes, that's right. I discovered the project last week when Gregor posted an internal announcement. And
Okay.
from there, I started poking at the project to see how I could contribute and get involved. And yeah, I'm happy to share more later on if need be.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And I guess your experience, both of you, with the Octokit kind of lends to this. You're pretty familiar with working on SDKs, so I mean, obviously it's a different space a bit, but that experience definitely helps with having built this out. And yeah, I guess maybe we can talk a bit about, so like, what the Copilot extensions preview SDK does. Like there's definitely I've seen it and I've dug into it a bit, like we were discussing last week, Gregor. But I guess it, in short terms, it's really just like the SDK empowers you to just build stuff quicker as an extension, versus, because like I remember, like, because I've definitely been exploring this stuff since I've been reading about it, and I tried hand rolling some stuff initially, and then it was just causing me a lot of just kind of like frustration a bit, and then I was like, I looked at the SDK and I was like, oh, okay, okay, this is just easier this way. Um, so I guess, yeah, what kind of things can you do with the SDK?
So the way this whole works is basically one request lifecycle, similar to
Okay.
webhooks. You're receiving a request from GitHub when someone
Okay.
sends a message to your extension. I mean, we can look through that later. And
Yeah.
then you have to respond to it. And this response now is significant. You don't call like some GitHub API for text to appear in the chat. Instead, you just stream your response and it automatically shows up in the chat. And the
Yeah.
syntax for this response is very particular. So it's
Okay.
very easy to make mistakes. And as an integrator, I do not really care for that. Like I just kind of care. I just want to understand what the user wants. I want to do something with the user's prompt and the history of our chat, and
Yeah.
maybe the context the user is currently in, and then I just want to respond to it. And what the SDK so far is doing is just providing very low level methods to at least hide away the how the sausage is made, basically. So
Yeah.
you just can give it some text and it will show up in the UI, and you don't need to worry about how exactly the syntax looks behind the curtain for that.
Yeah. Just bring some mustard and a bun maybe, and you're good to go. Okay. I don't know if I'm stretching that analogy too much, but uh, anyways, yeah, and like, because like under the hood, so like to give some context, like I, I work at OpenSauced, which we've been working on several things, but one of the things we've worked on is something called Star Search, which I'll drop a link to. And it's kind of like, we have a bunch of AI services that allow us to kind of treat a GitHub repository or repositories you care about as like a data set. And so like we're able to ask questions about it. So I've we've been basically I can give just a short demo here real quick because this will tie into like when we try to do this with the extension. But if I go to OpenSauced for a second here, and we go to, let me zoom in here on my massive screen here. So I have some like stock questions here we can ask, but I can say like my coworker Brandon, like what has he worked on recently? And so we have, like a lot of, AI services, there's a chat component to it. So like Chat GPT, Copilot and stuff. So we have this whole concept of, like we have these server sent events coming in. And I believe that's how the Copilot extension operates too. Like you're abstracting it away with the SDK, but it's primarily server send events, Gregor, or is it other stuff as well?
Yeah, it's server sent events as well. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and like I'll show them in here real quickly, and then we'll see this later in Copilot. But if we come to the network here, let me zoom in, and let's just do another question here. So I'll just ask about the lottery factor for the remix application. And where is it? Where's my response? XHR stream. Okay, so we have this stream here, and I'll just bring it over. Also, we can handle stuff like lottery factor. For folks not aware of that, that's something that other people have called bus factor, which is kind of gruesome. It's like what happens to somebody on a project if they get hit by a bus. Don't really want to think about that. So we kind of changed it up to be more like, well, what if Gregor wins the lottery? Is he really going to want to come into work tomorrow and work on this? So, but if we look at the response here, where is it? View decoded. Is this no? There's a view here with the payload that I don't know why it's encrypted at the moment, but I can usually show the server sent events. I don't know why I can't see it right now. I might be on the wrong one, but basically it's a stream of events. Oh, I'm on the wrong one. That's why. Okay. So you can see here, you end up with all these messages, and let's bring this back again to the payload event. Yeah, okay. So you can see there are all these just messages, and it's got an ID field, and then there's like data, and like it's a certain format, and that's kind of what Copilot's sending as well as in terms of the server sent events. So like all that to say is like this plays well with what Copilot and other chat interfaces do because it's pretty much a similar paradigm. So I kind of understood how things were working, but when I looked at it initially, for whatever reason, I think there was a lot of extra information in the server sent events of Copilot that it just made more sense to go grab one of the SDK functions instead. But I guess in terms of the SDK, so what are some of the things we can do here? Like, uh, I know there's this one. I haven't looked at this one yet, but like, can we go over like what verifying the request is exactly?
Not sure, like Francis, you want to go and then want to like monopolize all the time on myself, but happy to do it.
Yes, I think Gregor, you should go over this one, but I'll definitely raise my hand or something to share.
Cool.
So yeah.
So this is similar. People might be familiar for webhooks for all kinds of services. You receive a webhook to your servers, and you want to make sure that it actually comes from the service you want to you expect it to, and not some person in the
Okay.
middle attack, as it's called.
Yeah.
So what is happening? Usually you receive the request, and then you receive a signature, and then there's some mechanism to verify using the payload and the signature and some private key or public key that this is that this is legit. And it's kind of a complicated process.
Okay.
Right now, I don't think we need to go into detail, but basically this hides it all away from you. So you
Okay.
receive the request, you pass the request body, which is just a kind of original raw string, and
Okay.
the signature and key ID, which you receive from headers from the request you receive from GitHub. And then it tells you, yep, this is valid, or no, it's not valid, and you should probably ignore it.
Okay. And yeah, this is important. Obviously, you said like man in the middle attacks or just nefarious people doing things. And this is pretty secure because like when you get the private key, that's something you set in. Like we'll look at creating a GitHub app in a bit, but essentially that's something you create in the GitHub app, and unless you give access to someone your private key, there's really no way that they can actually replicate that. As far as I know, I'm definitely not a security expert, but as long as you keep the keys safe, it should be legit always, right? Pretty much.
Yeah, it's, we're getting now into the details. Like GitHub apps have their own private key, but it's actually not the key
Oh,
here
okay,
that
okay,
is
okay,
used. What you need to do is there's a API endpoint, like a public API endpoint that you need to request, which has
okay,
the currently active and the second most recently used public key. And you need to
okay,
retrieve these two keys, and then you
okay,
compare the key ID. This is why it's key ID,
okay,
to the ID of the two keys that you receive from the API. And if you find your match, you should be able to find the match.
okay,
Then you use this key for the verification process. So it's kind of
okay,
involved, but this method like hides it away from you.
okay. No, that's good. It's security is a tough one. Like I worked at McAfee working on their browser extension back in the mid 2010s, and it's like you like great user experience and security are at odds. It's like we want this to be easy, but it can't be that easy because it's has to be secure and stuff. So I kind of feel that here, but this is definitely a crucial thing. If you were to ship a production extension, this would definitely be a requirement.
Yeah, well, okay, I wanted to post in the chat, but I guess I have to log in first.
Okay, or if not, yeah, you can log into Twitch, or if not, you can drop it in our chat here. Either way, cool. Yeah. So yeah, while Gregor is just going ahead and sharing that there, we have some other functions in here, Francis. I don't know if you want to speak to some of them. So like if we look at here, for example, there's this create ack event, create text event, and create done event.
Yes.
I don't know if you wanted to speak to those.
Yeah, I'd love to. And yeah, Gregor and I just before this call we're just chatting about these methods. So perfect timing.
Oh, okay. Oh,
So
awesome.
before going into each of the different events, I wanted to highlight something here. So the exported function, the handler, this is sort of
Yeah.
in the same signature as a lot of the node middleware that you'll see, and so you'll have a request and response pair to work with. And
Okay.
so, in the context of building a Copilot extension, we have three methods as a way of interfacing with GitHub Copilot. And so, let's say you're building an extension, and you get some, you get some request from the user, some text, some command. Um,
Okay.
really, these are really things to sort of help the user experience come alive. And so,
Okay.
ideally, when you say and you invoke this sort of create ack event and and you respond with a create ack event, what should happen is that the Copilot chat window that you're sort of interfacing with the extension will say,
Yeah.
"Oh, Copilot is responding or Copilot is doing something," and
Okay.
this is kind of like your time to go do the work, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And of course, like when you're finished with the work, we will respond by ending it with the done event. But I think what's really interesting that sort of gives that conversational piece is this create text event method. And so there are different ways that you can write to the response. You could write in chunks. You could just write one long string.
Okay.
But the create text event is sort of like an indication to say, oh, like I would like to reply back to the thing that you've given back to me, right? And
Okay.
so, as a developer or an integrator working on Copilot extensions, you have these three sort of events of acknowledgement to say, yep, I'm doing something with with what you given me. You're responding back with the created text event, and to close out, you say you're done, and then the cycle sort of begins again if
Okay.
the client decides to hit your server. Yeah, Gregor, did I misspeak on any of those methods, or did you want to add any more color to that?
No, I think that puts it very well. I mean, there are some other types of responses we'll be able to talk about besides, the text event, but basically the acknowledging and the done event.
Okay.
Like I would consider best practice. The acknowledgement is not necessary if you're super fast, but it's kind of
Okay.
nice user experience to show
Yeah.
that your agent is kind of thinking or responding.
Yeah. Yeah. Give that signal to the UI. Yeah. I know for sure. Yeah. And so yeah, like you're saying, so this is just like a handler. This could be in any framework like Express or a serverless function, or basically there's many ways to slice it, but basically where these events end up sending back server sent events to the client that knows how to process those based on like certain criteria in the payload. Okay, cool. So uh, so we have some events like that. There's also this prompt, and looking at this obviously looks like it's going to be prompting either OpenAI or something. I don't know if you wanted to speak to the prompting here, Gregor.
Yeah, so this is like a much simplified API compared to what the OpenAI SDK is doing.
Okay.
What is happening behind the curtain is that Copilot has an OpenAI compatible API, like a chat completions API, which this method is
Okay.
using. But you could also point it to OpenAI. You would just need to pass in your own OpenAI credentials. In
Okay.
this case, because it's a Copilot API, it accepts a token that you already have, which is why
Okay.
this is kind of nice, right? But you
Yeah.
can
Yeah. For sure.
select a custom model, and you can, pass in a custom system message. And then like more methods. You can look at the API specification for it. But
Okay.
this is kind of me coming to this place where I haven't worked on these AI chat completions toolings or chat UIs yet, and I
Okay.
kind of wanted to take advantage of me not being in a place where I kind of have already a lot of knowledge and I'm not even aware of what I know. So I was thinking, what is the most simple method that we could make to
Yeah.
enable that? And that's kind of where I landed.
Yeah. I think that's some nice DX because you don't have to do anything initially. Like you can just start prompting. But again, like you said, if you're like, oh, I want to use the latest models, on OpenAI, I can go plug that in, my credentials, whatever. But starting off, don't even have to worry about any of that. So that's pretty nice. So
Yeah.
okay, cool. Um, we can go check through. I can't remember how many more methods are. I think these are the verification ones we were talking about before, or are these different ones?
Yeah, these are like now they're all the separate methods that you can use. There's like the verify request by key ID, which is kind of a composite method already based on the other
Okay.
ones. The fetch verification keys is where it sends out the request to this API endpoint that I mentioned in the chat,
Okay.
which is kind of using internally. So it's the most low level stuff that I think everyone will need to do that is as much agnostic to the environment you're running your app in as it's possible.
Okay. Gotcha. Cool. All right. Let's. I'll just go through. Like, we can definitely look at these things. We're gonna do some live coding in a bit, but so yeah.
Yeah.
So just some more functions to do verify the payloads here, and then here's the acknowledge events, the create text events, and the done. Here's another interesting one. So we had the prompt. Is the create confirmation event related to after you prompt, or is it for something else?
This is you basically ask the user to confirm something. So
Okay.
just like you can send like a hello world, text to the user, there's other syntax you can send, and one of that syntax is for a confirmation event. So
Okay.
let's say you integrate with a Copilot extension, and the user asks to do like a mutation that is somehow destructive, that might, deleting data. So
Okay.
at this point, it would be a good idea as the agent to confirm, like, hey, I understand your question. This is what you're asking me to do. You want me to like cancel this account or like delete this issue.
Okay.
Is it really what you want me to do? And then like a confirmation UI actually shows, and the user can click a button to confirm. And
Okay.
that's,
Okay.
again, like just like a higher level method to make that simpler for you.
Yeah.
And yeah, you pass in an ID, and later on there is another helper method where you can kind of parse the request body you received and
Okay.
check, is it a response to a confirmation event.
Okay. Cool. Cool. Also, thank you, Diana, too, for the follow in chat there. Okay. Cool. Yeah, I know that makes sense. Yeah, and that's probably this is something that's probably required because like I wouldn't even if I did raw server send events, I wouldn't be able to do that because I imagine I'm not allowed to generate UI from my response, or can I? Like I know you can, like I could generate like a markdown or like a link, but could I run arbitrary like JavaScript in my response? I'm guessing no, but
No.
yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. That would just be dangerous. You know what I mean? Like if I just said alert, do something like so. Yeah, that makes total sense. Cool. All right. All right. Cool. Cool. And then there's this other event. I was reading up about this, but hey Dax, good to see you. Okay. Oh, thanks for. Oh, there's a bunch of people. I didn't see a bunch of people in chat there. Okay. Thank you for generating my mom Dax. Okay, cool. Yeah, so there's some other things here that we can do. I don't know if you wanted to speak to this one, Francis, but like creating references event or
I didn't touch this part of the API, and
okay,
have
no,
a
that's cool.
guess
That's
as to
cool.
what what this is, but I would love if Gregor could help illuminate us both.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like a additional UI. Basically, if you want to explain to the user where they can learn more about whatever you responded to, it can have like links to code or like links to a failed build, and it kind of shows like a collapsible UI of references. So just like another type of UI. You could just put it into your response body if you wanted to,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
um, but this is more elegant in some use cases.
Yeah. Also, thanks for the raid, Dax. Um, yeah, somebody was asking. This is kind of getting into implementation details, but like I've been messing around with it in TypeScript. I saw there's Go examples, but somebody was asking about Elixir. I guess from the GitHub app standpoint, like the SDK that we're looking at right now is strictly TypeScript, JavaScript, but there's I don't believe there's other versions of the SDK at the moment. Like this is obviously in preview still as well, but
Yeah, so this is just JavaScript right now. We're kind of like paving the
okay,
way. This was really like a last minute, request if we could work on the SDK. So
okay,
we're just kind of exploring the space right now.
yeah,
But I think it's also like a good reference. So if someone wants to go in and even not wait, for GitHub to do the work,
yeah,
and just kind of implement something in Erlang or Go or whatever, in programming language you like to use, then
yeah,
sure, go ahead, and you can still file issues in this repository if you have like questions as an SDK
okay.
developer. I would love to hear from you.
Yeah, and to give some context too, the GitHub app can literally be implemented in anything. Like somebody's asked about Elixir, you could make the web app component, which is the GitHub app for the extension in Elixir. It's just more there's no SDK for it yet, so you would either have to create the SDK for that language, like you're saying, or you could just go and create the raw server send events that Copilot is expecting. But like you could but literally any language that has some kind of web server, which is pretty much most languages, could be built, correct?
I was just gonna say, yeah, I would imagine so. I think looking through the SDK itself, like all of the URLs that we're hitting for, the specific endpoints to the GitHub Copilot API, I think that one could look through that as, again, as Gregor mentioned, as a reference point. And so long as you have in another language a way to communicate to
Yeah,
those
yeah,
servers, then yeah, go for it. It is under the MIT license, so oh, there you go.
yeah, yeah. And I I don't imagine it would be like, obviously you've done a lot of the groundwork here, Gregor. So like I feel like porting this would be I'm not gonna say easy because like you never know, but like given that there's like actual implementation in TypeScript, it should be not too bad to just say, hey, I want to do this in Go now. Obviously there's syntax and different patterns in different languages, but it's all there pretty much.
Yeah, you
I
could
don't know.
probably have Copilot, to just
Yeah, you could just say, yeah, can
convert
you
the source code into different programming language. But in each programming language also has like its conventions. So and for that you would need to adapt it. So I feel like each SDK should feel very natural and native to each programming language, which if it's like entirely generated, sometimes it's hard to achieve. So in that regard, there was always some manual work needed, I think.
yeah,
But it's definitely a good starting point. You could probably ask whatever, your AI of choice to take this as an input and give you
yeah.
Elixir as an output, and it will be a good starting point. I think probably it should be easy enough for an AI to handle right now.
Yeah, it's I've been doing a lot of Go at work lately. I mean, I was primarily building out most of the. I mean, we're a small startup, so you end up doing a lot of things. But I built out a lot of the front end, but doing a lot of stuff in the CI/CD pipeline as well. But like more recently, Go, because we have this pizza CLI we released today. But so I feel like maybe I'll look into porting it to Go. Who knows?
Yeah. It's just
Cool.
maybe one thing to say about the current state of this SDK is it's really just a list of stateless functions. So it's as
Yeah.
simple as it gets to translate it to another programming language. Like there is a file in this repository we call Dream Code, where we kind of talking about where we are
Oh yeah.
heading and where we want to go. And then you have like a state, and it will become much harder, I think, to automatically translate it to another language. But right
Yeah.
now it should be very straightforward.
Yeah, the dream, where was it? It's at the end here. Sorry for all
Yep,
the
I think
scrolling,
it's
folks. Yeah,
dreamcode.md.
yeah,
Yes.
cool.
Yeah, we can jump ahead and talk a little bit about that. But the
Yeah,
strategy is here to do both at once, to build the SDK, starting from slow as possible to be as agnostic as possible, but at
yeah,
the same time start the conversation about what is it ultimately that we're trying to achieve? What is the best possible developer experience without being constrained by technical limitations or complexities? So
yeah,
we are using that basically as a piece, as an artifact, and everyone is very welcome to send pull requests and say like, hey, I think we should do that, or this would be cool. So this is a very much a living document right now.
yeah. This is a side note, but this is what I always tell people about open source. Like, regardless of what your thoughts are on open source, I just think it's great. Like, the code is there. Like, you can literally learn from the code. You can look at the pull requests. So there's like, because I just remember in the past on several things, like not the same stuff, but I was stuck on some issue with Webpack years ago, and I had to debug it, and I was able to grab all the code and step through the Webpack code, which was maybe not enjoyable, but like just the fact that it's all there, so that's pretty cool. Um, that's just my little side note, but anyways, okay, we've looked at a bunch of things here. I think the audience probably wants to see us do something, so I'm thinking we could. Uh, we were talking about doing like an initial hello world there, Gregor, and then we can obviously evolve it to something a little more substantial.
Yeah.
Um,
And we
so
can
I'm
also
gonna.
start out by installing an existing one. There's this Blackbeard agent. I don't know if you tried that. It's like an app that
Okay.
exists.
Yeah, we
No.
can grab Blackbeard. Yeah, I believe I have that. Give me a sec here. Okay, cool. So yeah, I can kind of speak to this one briefly, but basically it's a Copilot extension that when you ask it questions, it just basically responds like a pirate. You know, obviously maybe not life changing work here, but it's definitely a fun example, and it also just showcases what you could do. So I'm gonna
Yeah, I meant
so
like not you don't even need to go through the code. It's just like you can go to
oh
github.com/app/blackbeard-agent,
oh
and
okay.
you kind of like to show, show it in directly in the UI. So /apps. I added a link to this chat here. I'm not
Okay,
sure.
here, let me go grab it. Okay, yeah, I see it. Sorry. Is it in the marketplace or is this just straight? Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
Okay,
So this is Jason. Jason, you've probably seen around in Probot and Octokit work, and he's everywhere. And Jason is also involved in building out Copilot extensions right now.
cool, cool. All right,
So
I'm
you can
just gonna install
install
it on
it,
my own.
doesn't matter.
Okay, and I guess here's a just general question in terms of like principal, least privilege. Don't want to give away too much, but I mean for this particular one, I shouldn't really need to share it for any repositories, or should I?
I'd say maybe create a test repository and
Okay,
then target that test repository. Could be
okay.
public, could be private, but that way the scope is only for that repo, so that you could start running it only on that repo.
Okay, I have a test action.
Perfect.
I was building because I've been working on a GitHub Copilot, sorry, GitHub Action recently. So there we go. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and install this, and yes, thank you. Passkeys for the win. Okay, let me just make this bigger. Okay,
Okay,
so
so now the agent is installed, and now you can basically open the chat UI on
okay,
github.com. There is
okay,
like this little icon. Yep.
okay. So let's do a new
And in
conversation.
here, you should now be able to say add, or you press this add icon there, and you should see Blackbeard agent.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
and just like ask it, what are like popular languages on github.com, and whatever it is.
Yeah. Okay.
Or you can ask
Uh,
where's the treasure buried, and then see if it'll
okay.
get.
Where's the
Yeah, it might actually hit like a filter telling you this is, basically not within the scope. So this is
oh,
part of the flow now because using it for the first time. So
Hmm.
okay. So I'll
um,
connect.
so now you kind of need to authenticate the app as the user,
Okay.
and you basically tell it, okay, yes, I permit this app to be used as an agent in a
Okay.
chat as
All right.
myself.
Cool.
Then it
I
looks
don't
like
need
we
to be.
redirected to notifications, but I think we
No,
should.
I clicked on that by
Oh,
accident.
okay. Okay. Gotcha.
Here,
Gotcha.
I'm gonna zoom out a little bit here, and I'm just gonna check the chat real quick. Cool.
Sure.
All right. So, all right. So we're gonna use Blackbeard here, and we'll say, I have a feeling, like you said, Gregor, it's probably gonna say, "Where's the treasure is buried?" Is probably not a programming related. Where's the treasure buried? If I knew how to type, cool. All right. Cool. Oh, yes. Okay, I guess it does know. The treasure be buried on an island. Okay, cool, cool. All right, so that's like a fun thing, but you can ask it programming questions. So, um, I could say something like, like ask about a certain algorithm or something, I guess.
Now that it's installed to your test action, and if you're open to sharing a little bit more about the repository, then maybe we can ask Blackbeard agent about, you know,
Oh yeah, yeah,
like tell me more
sure.
about this repository that you're installed on or something.
Yeah, there, there's not really any code. Well, actually, there's some code in here. So basically, for context, I built out this GitHub action that runs. We have this pizza CLI that I dropped in the chat, and it does a few things. But what it does right now is the GitHub action will run the CLI and it'll generate or update this code owners file, which is just something that is part of GitHub. I think GitLab uses this as well, but it's a way to help manage your repository, like knowing who's working on what, or who's the people I should ask for this particular part of the code base. So that's like, so there's really just these two files in here, but then there's my workflow, which I built out. This is just calling the test action I built.
Oh, nice, nice.
Um,
Um, oh,
yeah,
can we? I have a prompt. Is it's a little bit blurry, but is that a cron job on?
yeah.
Okay,
So yeah. Here,
like
let me zoom in. Yeah.
yeah. What if you ask Blackbeard agent to say, like, how would I update the cron job to run 2 times a month, and
Okay.
then we'll see like if it has enough awareness of where it's installed that it'll actually tell you like how to do that.
Also, hey Fuzzy, good to see you. And also Diana in the chat saying, I didn't realize you could use Copilot in the GitHub UI. That's pretty interesting. Yeah, I didn't. I discovered that a little while ago just because we got access to, I think, Copilot Enterprise at work, so it just showed up one day in the UI. But that is pretty neat that it's kind of everywhere. So sorry, Francis, you were saying, how would I update the cron job to twice a month? Is that what you're
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah, something like that. Run twice a month.
Yeah.
And I think that this is an example of how to use an agent that has context for where it's installed on. So
Okay.
I am kind of curious to see
Okay. Cool.
what it'll say.
Okay, so to run it twice a month, sorry, I can't stop laughing. It's written in Pirate. But
Nice.
okay, so you can specify 2 specific days. I guess that's what the 115 is. I honestly don't know cron syntax well. I always go to like cron.com or something to do it.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
but
And
this
I
now
will
you
use
don't
definitely be
have to
helpful.
anymore, just ask your friendly
Yeah,
Copilot.
yeah,
Well, the
yeah.
Copilot itself would probably be able to help you with that, but someone could build like a specific extension only for
Oh.
crons.
Oh yeah,
The
and
Oh, sorry, Nick, go ahead.
no. I was just gonna say that was a great idea. Like kind of the idea of, kind of like the Linux philosophy where like just do one small thing, an agent that's really good at one particular thing. Um,
Yeah, that's a really hmm. Let's hold on to that as we develop the example some
okay,
more. So I think that we just asked it a general cron question. I
okay,
think you should ask Blackbeard agent, how would I update the pizza.yaml file so that the schedule runs 2 times a month? Output the whole file, and then
okay.
you could say please and thank you. I try to be polite to the robots just in case. But then I think I think that the idea here is that not only do you have sort of the corpus of like whatever it's trained on, but because it has context to where it's installed, you could do very specific things for and to your repository. Oh, what did it say?
I think it did show it. It spit it out, and then
Huh.
um,
Oh, it hit a limit.
that's the filtering, I guess. Let me try again because I did
Sure.
see it pop up, and then it did remove it. So maybe there's something in the question, or maybe in my file content. Okay, yeah, it shows up and then
I
takes it
actually can't
down.
see it. It's covered by our faces. Like, how can I?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Sorry. Here, let me move it over. Sorry, Gregor. Um, so you should be
Oh,
able to see it now.
interesting.
Yeah. Here, let me.
So
Let
just
me.
a heads up, like for people trying this out, my understanding this is a really hard problem to do to make this safe, right? So we have all kinds of
Mm,
measurements to make sure that there is no abuse happening.
Yeah.
And these filters are actively being worked on. And as we see, and we get more feedback, this will improve over time. But if you get this kind of response and you think that's not right, might be a good thing to do to like let support know about it.
Yeah. Fuzzy saying in the chat, "Be polite to the robots, else when the uprising comes, they will come for you." So,
Exactly.
I'm glad someone got my
yeah.
reference. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder if it's anything in the text in my CLI that might be triggering it. Like maybe the word trigger. Maybe it saw that. I don't know. Anyways,
um,
but I did see it output. It
hmm.
just removes it right away.
Yeah.
So Yeah. Okay.
But we can see how, I just kind of wanted to show how the interaction is, like
Yeah.
what we're working
Yeah.
towards, and now we can go and see how it's done. I think like the Blackbeard example doesn't actually use the SDK, but we
Okay.
actually added an example to the SDK repository, which more or less does the same thing. And we can run it from there if you want. Like we could build something entirely from scratch, or we
Okay.
could just look through the examples in the SDK that
Okay.
we just
Yeah.
did today.
Yeah. Let's
Yeah.
go for that. Okay. Cool.
I,
So
I've been really hoping that we could create a pizza agent today.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, spoiler alert a bit. Like, as I got excited about looking into this, that I actually made a lot of progress building out my thing. So I can definitely we can definitely look at that after. Um, I'm sure we have time. Just doing a time check. We're about an hour in. Are you both good for at least another 30 or 45 minutes or
Yeah, I'm
okay, cool.
I'm available. Yeah,
Okay,
let's
cool.
do
Time
it.
All right,
flies.
perfect. All right. Yeah, no, time flies for sure. Okay, so I'm thinking, yeah, let's go grab the extension example. Like, do you think it's good to just grab, is there SDK examples or should I just grab,
Yeah, so you go to the, you can open like the
If you go to the root of the repository,
oh,
there's an
yeah.
examples directory. Yep.
example.
And then we
Oh,
could do
okay.
the hello world. Yep. You got
Okay.
it. Nice.
I
Cool.
mean, this is like the
Okay.
most minimal example, right? This is not the one that will give you like kind of this pirate behavior. That's the next one.
Yeah.
But
But we can
basically,
do
this
this.
is as little code as you can do. There is no request verification in here.
Okay.
Did we lose Francis?
He might have frozen up. Let me check.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, but
he's.
basically, you can, if
I'm
you
sure he'll be
have
back.
the SDK, you can check out the SDK
Okay.
repository.
Yeah. Okay. So let me go ahead and clone that. Ba-ba-ba. Side note, but I love the GitHub CLI. I used to.
Yeah,
I don't know. A few years ago, I was checking out PRs. I can't even remember the Git commands to do it, but I had like an alias for it. And then when I saw the GitHub CLI with just GH, PR,
yeah, create. Yeah, I
I
use
was
it
just
all the
like,
time. Man. It's beautiful. No, that's like
yeah,
one of my most precious, like favorite projects that
yeah,
GitHub is doing for sure.
yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
so we found a repository, CD
okay,
into it,
cool. Yeah, let's clone
um,
that.
and then you need to, yeah,
Oh,
you have
okay.
to.
Sorry, I just saw the message from Francis. He's just getting a glass of water. He'll be back in a
Okay,
second. Yeah. Okay. So we've got that cloned. Okay. Let me just bring this up a bit. All right. Clear, and we'll do what's it called? Copilot extensions, I'm guessing.
yeah, you need to CD into preview.
Oh, that's it. There we go.
Yeah,
Cool.
okay, yeah,
All right. Cool.
okay,
So let me zoom this in a bit. Okay. Folder contains a dev. I'm not going to worry about the dev container right now, but okay.
yeah. You just,
So
you need to install the dependencies in the root folder
yeah.
first,
Cool.
because the examples are kind of installing the SDK with a relative path. So you kind of
Okay.
need to set up the repository first, and then
Okay.
you
So
can
we've got that.
cd into an example.
Okay, perfect. Also, hey Francis, Gregor and myself didn't see your message where they're like, "Oh no, I guess his camera died. He'll be back." But
I'm alive.
yeah,
I'm happy to
okay,
report life. So it looks like we cloned the repo and now we're changing directory into it.
yeah. So we'll go
Okay,
into
cool.
I guess hello world
Yeah,
and
need to install.
yeah, we installed the dependencies. So if I just open up
Okay.
the
I think
hello
now
world,
you need to run npm install again index in the examples hello world folder as well, because it has its own package JSON.
okay, perfect.
Nice.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay, cool.
And
And we should
now you can
Should be able to run it, eh?
Yeah, you can. I think that it has its own package with its own script, so you can just do
Yeah.
like npm start
Cool.
or npm run watch.
Yeah, we could do watch, I guess.
Yeah, let's do watch. That's more magical. So okay, and now you need to ports. You need to forward a port. Like that's the thing. In order to receive requests, you need some kind of tunneling, and luckily VS Code has that built in.
Yeah. So I just got to allow this. Cool. There we go. And
you have to make it public. That's an important step.
That's a mistake I made the other week when I was trying to look at one of these examples. Because when it's private, if people run into the issue where they forget to, you're gonna get like a 401 error when you're trying to log into the app, and it's because when it's private, there's this intermediary page that says, "Are you sure you want to go to whatever the URL is?" So, anyways, okay, so we have this port forwarding now. So if I go to this, if I open that URL.
It should just kind of show, okay, I think this is kind of the default response to a GET request.
Yeah. So there we go.
Nice. Okay. Nice.
All right, cool. All right, so that's
all
good.
Right. The next step is we need to register a GitHub app.
Yeah. So let's go to GitHub.
So, I mean, basically Copilot Extensions is a new capability of GitHub Apps. GitHub Apps can do a lot of stuff. But in this particular case, you can register a GitHub app on your own account. You can register GitHub apps on GitHub organizations as well. But you go to settings, developer settings.
Cool. Yeah. And
then GitHub apps. Yep. And then just register a new GitHub app, and call it whatever you want. Like you will need, it's probably like, it needs to be unique, right? So
sorry.
Prefix it with your username or something.
I'm just gonna call it YOLO World. I don't know. I use YOLO all the time. Well, I'll find out if it's taken or not. Okay.
You need to set the homepage URL. You can just set it to whatever, example.com, or you can set it to this URL if you want. But it won't make it work just yet. And then there is, when you scroll further down, you arrive at webhooks, which is something we do not want.
Okay.
So you can just disable it because we don't care for it. That's something for another stream. We need permissions. And I think these are account permissions.
Okay.
And there is a permission called Copilot Chat, I think.
Okay. So
yes.
read only. Yeah. Okay.
So you need to set that. And only on your account, that's fine, I think. Cool. Create a GitHub app, so that means nobody can install this app, only you can. Well, somebody created YOLO app, so.
Okay, there we go. Create.
Okay. And now in the sidebar, and this is new since today, you see Copilot in the sidebar of GitHub App Settings.
Okay, and there's a question in the chat from Diana. I think this is my old coworker Diana from Netlify, but I'm not sure. But
hey Netlify, and hi Diana.
She said they say, can GitHub? Oh yes, it is Diana. Okay, cool. Good to see it. They're asking, can GitHub apps be private, or are they more for sharing with others? And then she goes, oh, you just answered that question by saying my account only. So
that's the setting. So if it's private, it's only private to the account where you register the GitHub app. Nobody else will be able to install it. Okay. So now you go to this new Copilot settings, and this one is changing all the time. Oh, there's a drop down. What is the another? Oh, okay. I guess. Okay.
It's either on or off, I guess.
Future, why would they do a drop down? Maybe they will be more up. Okay, and the URL is the one that is relevant. So this is where you put in this one.
Okay.
And I guess you need a description. It has a star, so you need to just write whatever there.
This is exciting.
Cool. All right, so I should be able to save it now, I think.
Yes, save it. Yeah. So I think you might. Wait, what?
Why did it? Oh, that's weird. I think Oh no, it's okay. I don't know. It's for maybe I was too
Okay.
fast on my finger. Okay, cool.
I
It seems to be configured. Okay.
Okay, I think we might need to do one more thing, but let's just try it out. So
Okay.
now
So
you
let's
need
go.
to go on the sidebar. You see install app. That's a shortcut you're getting to
Oh,
install
whoops.
the app.
Yeah. Okay.
So this is basically there. Now you can install the app. You see you can only install it on your own account.
Okay. Perfect.
Okay.
Okay.
And now
And
open the chat UI and see if your YOLO
cool.
app is popping up there.
Okay. So sorry, Blackbeard. We'll see you another day. Okay. So we've got the YOLO world.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
Okay. Let's see if it
And
works.
should I ask a question or does it just
Yeah, just say
respond?
it doesn't matter. We don't do anything.
Okay.
You just can say hi or
How you
Yeah.
doing? Okay, so we
Nice.
got to
And then we have
connect
to go
like
to the
you're saying
connect flow.
before.
Yeah.
oh, it's
Okay.
nice. The GitHub, yeah, that's what I was thinking because this is an
Okay.
OAuth flow. For that,
Okay.
we need to configure an OAuth callback.
Okay.
And maybe that's something that will go away in future. The setting is required, but yeah, you need to go back to your app settings.
Okay.
And there is this one. And you can just set it to, the URL of your app, or you can just set it to example.com. It really doesn't matter because we don't really
Okay.
do anything with the callback, but it needs to be set in order to enable the overflow for the GitHub app because Copilot
Okay.
depends on overflow.
Okay. Do I need to
Okay,
check off anything as well?
really? No, that's okay.
Okay.
Don't do
I'll
that.
go ahead
No,
and
it
save
saves
the changes.
changes. All right,
The,
let's try it again.
cool. The one question I have is like when you change settings like that, you don't have to reinstall it. It's just applies them or
It depends. Oh man, Francis, you work on support for this.
Yeah.
You must have a lot of stories for that.
Yeah. So I would say that if you update the permissions, for example,
yeah.
like let's say it had access, read write access to repo and pull requests, and then you revoked one of them, it's
Okay.
probably going to reprompt and ask as a
Okay.
security measure. But for these Copilot settings, I'm not sure, but I think
Okay.
it's best to
Yeah.
maybe, yeah.
Yeah, if you change URLs for callback URLs or webhook URLs, no, you don't need to reinstall because it's global.
Okay.
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 Cool.
Permissions are per installation. So
Okay.
if you add something later, yes, you need to reinstall it for the permissions to be applied to your installation.
Okay.
All right, let's see.
All
Now that
right.
you
Here's
I'm
the
gonna do a friends reference. How you doing?
it's Joey, was it?
Yeah. Yeah, Joey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Got
All
it.
right. So I'm gonna go connect. Okay.
Oh,
So
here we go.
Okay,
authorize.
so this just gets redirect you now to your OK page. So now you need to go
Okay.
back to.
Okay.
Yeah, I wish that was not necessary. Like, I
Yeah.
wish it kind of would redirect you to github.com and kind of back to your chat or something per default,
Yeah.
but maybe it's something that will happen later.
Okay. So
Okay.
how does
Oh
it
wow,
know
did
it's
we
Francis?
commit our changes when we tested earlier, Francis? So
I'm
basically,
forever in the code base. Yay.
Okay.
we
Okay.
we
All
will
right.
fix that
Ship
after the
it.
call.
No, no, it's all
like,
good.
go
Glad
back
it
to VS
works.
Code and let it say hi Nick or something, to
Yeah.
kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just
Especially
to
with
be
that
clear
watch
to
feature
people
that's
in the
on.
chat, I haven't hacked Francis's account. This is hard coded. So okay, cool. Yeah. So let me just close the terminal there, and yeah, here we go. So we can say hello, and I'm gonna. Is the Octokit in here? No. Okay. So we'll say like hello, Nick, and then if I do it again, it's just for folks in the chat. We started the web server in watch mode, so it just restarts when I make changes. So it should say hello, Nick now. Yeah, there we go. Okay, perfect.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, live coding, it works.
Live
Oh,
coding.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
want to with us today.
I wanted to pause here and say this was my aha moment when I was working on this with Gregor. And I thought, well, if it's just a matter of changing what's in your code and then re-invoking the chat, then
Yeah,
you can really like have a nice loop here of development. So,
yeah,
if your app is talking to third-party APIs, your own APIs, and you can update the response to some text, then
Yeah.
you could do a lot of work and then send that updated text back. And now you have like this nice development cycle between
Yeah.
what you're doing in Visual Studio or your editor of choice and the chat interface. So wanted to
Yeah.
mention that to the audience. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a good thing to bring up because like when I first looked at this, I was like, how am I going to debug this? I work in Node and TypeScript a lot, so I'm comfortable with like the Node debugger or like the debugger in like Chrome, which you can use to debug Node 2 or like Dino. But at first I was like, because just to be completely transparent, when I started working on the proof of concept for OpenSauced, it's the first time I ever created a GitHub app, like not install one, but actually create one. So I wouldn't say naive, but I just wasn't aware of all the pieces. Like I just didn't really know how it worked at first. And then I was like, oh, it's a web app. And then getting back to what you were saying, Gregor, it's kind of behaving kind of like a webhook pattern to some degree, because it is a long in this particular case, it's a long running server, but you could potentially run this on serverless as well, as long as it can handle the duration of the request response. But uh, but yeah, it's I think for me is like I do use Visual Studio Code all the time, but um, it's nice, like the the development of this, like the setup for me is really ideal right now. So we have the app in watch mode. I can start the debugger if I want to. So and we also have the port forwarding, because at first I was like, I can't deploy a local host, and then I was like, I tried the tunneling in the port forwarding in VS Code, and then I made the mistake, like I was mentioning to you the other day, Gregor. So I ended up I was using Cloudflare instead to tunnel because I thought it was a limitation of the port forwarding, and then it was just I wasn't using a public one.
Mm, mm.
So it's a really nice experience, like because if I come back here now, like this is what I've been doing to kind of work on things. So if I put a breakpoint here and I just do Command Shift P, I typically like to attach to the node process, and I know that it's the watch one, so I can just do this, and then I can come back here now, and then I can just do whatever, and it should hit the breakpoint. Okay, wait, I picked the wrong node process, I guess. This one, I guess. Yeah, that's the right one. And then I can just come here, and then all of a sudden I'm in the code. Like this is like I don't use the debugger all the time, but in this particular scenario, it's like super ideal because like I'm new to all the Copilot extension stuff. I just kind of want to know what's going on. I don't know what headers are in things, like what's it's just been this is like a super ideal setup. So like we have the port forwarding, so you don't need an existing domain. You don't have to deploy it somewhere. You can, like everything. It's a really nice setup to build it out. I don't know if there's other bells and whistles in terms of like the development experience that you like, Gregor, but this is how I've been kind of tinkering around with things. Oh, sorry, you're on mute.
Gregor, you muted.
Yeah, there's one more thing that I would really like us to do. There is a programmatic way to register GitHub apps, the manifest flow. It's just not ready for Copilot yet. Like there are like these additional attributes, so we can't do it yet. But when that is done, you could do something like you start your app and we realize, oh, you didn't register a GitHub app in your local dev environment yet. And it starts like a local dev server. You just click a button, you give it a name, and you don't need to go to the flow and find the right permissions and set the redirect URL. Like it just will kind of happen transparently for you.
That's really
That's
nice.
something I would love to do to kind of improve the developer experience. But other than that, this is fantastic. I also really like when you have the breakpoints and you can just, also have a terminal, right? You can kind of like, you can run the create done event and see the output of it right there.
Like just
you can enter it right there, and you kind of explore like what is this actually doing, and this way you can also understand very nicely what the SDK is doing here for you.
Yeah, so like I can do like response, or I can do like
you just to like create done event, for example, just like execute this one method. Yeah.
whoops.
Or you have to press tab for
Yeah,
autocomplete.
I do this all the time. I always do
Me
the
too.
opposite. Okay,
But you
so
see, this is
yeah,
exactly it. Like you see all these line breaks and all the syntax and the JSON, and like you don't need to worry about that at all.
yeah, yeah, and this is what we were talking about at the beginning. This is the server sent syntax, and it was a little bizarre to me initially when I was working on Star Search and OpenSauced, but this is actually really great. I hadn't thought to just output it because it's not actually affecting the response. I'm just getting the textual response to it, like so it's not setting anything. So that's actually a good idea too. But yeah, that manifest sounds pretty amazing if and when that ever lands. Cool. No, that's awesome. Just gonna go ahead and check the chat real quick here. Oops, wrong screen. The beauty of live streaming is there's things all over the place. Cool. All right. So yeah, so just to kind of show where we're at here. So we've taken a peek at the preview SDK. I'm gonna drop a link to that again. We had some fun with the Blackbeard extension. We pulled down the SDK and we're currently running an example. And we created a GitHub app. We configured it using the URL, which we're using from the port forwarding. And we're able to go through the whole flow. We're able to use our new agent, which is a terrible name I gave, YOLO World 1234565. But and then like I can stop in the code, I can see what's going on. We're actually getting the textual event. So like again, this is a trivial example, like we were kind of mentioning, but it definitely showcases pretty well all the things you can do. And like I know there's other parts in the SDK, like we can say like send an error, for example. We can do the verify the payloads and stuff like you were saying, Gregor. So
Yeah, we can
yeah,
just look at the prompt example, as kind of like a more complicated one. You can just
yeah,
stop that server and go to the other folder, run npm
cool.
install there, and start the server there, and it will just work because it's the same port forwarding. You don't need to do anything with that.
Yeah, yeah, that's another thing I noticed because as long as you don't close, I think even after you close VS, actually it is the same port. Even when you close VS Code, I think it must be linked to my because I'm logged into VS Code to sync my settings with GitHub. I think it retains the port forwarding URL for that
Yeah.
specific port. I don't know if it's forever, but
No, it's for
it's
30
definitely
days. Like this is like a service by Microsoft. I think it's like mstunnel.dev or something.
Okay.
And they persist these URLs for 30 days for you unless you want them to be changed.
Okay.
Which is very nice, yeah. But at some point it will just stop working and you should know why. You will need to update the Copilot URL in your GitHub App Settings then.
Okay. This is also, I always like mentioning this. It's not a trick, but if you add the -R when you open up VS Code, let me actually wait. Let me switch.
I just have like an alias for it. Just C, and it just like opens the current folder in with every.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I should create an alias for that. I use G for Git because I'm lazy too.
Right.
But okay. So yeah, so we're gonna reopen this. Okay.
I think you'll need to install the dependencies once it's all loaded up and such.
Yeah. So yeah, so let's go ahead and reinstall. NI is just my alias for npm install, and we can start the port forwarding right away. It doesn't matter if it's not running yet. And okay, and we'll make it public again, which is key.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that out loud because like I was stuck on this for like a few hours initially. Okay, cool. Yes, continue.
Just real quick, something to keep in mind. I can't really read the URL. It's a little bit blurry, and that's okay. But just making sure that the URL that we're port forwarding on to, it's the same as what's configured in the GitHub app. If they're the same, then cool. Okay, great.
Yeah, it should be like Gregor was saying, it retains it for 30 days, which I didn't know because like I was like, I don't want to reconfigure my GitHub app when I started tinkering with this, so I just left the port forwarding on when I went to bed. But now I know I can stop it. Okay, so let's move this over here. Just get a bit of real estate, and I'm gonna go ahead and start the app. npm
Yeah, you
start
can do like
probably.
the npm run watch again to get the
Oh yeah,
magic.
it's true. Let's get the watch. Okay, cool. And let's come back here. And it's going to be the same app now, but let's look at what the prompt is here, I guess. Um, Here, I'll just make this bigger for a second. Where's the prompt? Okay, this is actually using checking the validation.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is sending the
verification,
acknowledge
sorry.
event. And this is
Okay.
where it's forwarding your prompt now to the chat completions API, which is the OpenAI compatible chat completions API
Okay.
from Copilot.
Okay, yeah, that's if I look for prompt.
Yeah. It only kind of gives it this context of the Black Pirate. So, instead of by default, the prompt is just like, you are a helpful assistant, I think. That's like the default.
Okay.
And you can override it. So you can say, but you are a pirate now, and you should
Yeah.
greet the user. And it's kind of, and this prompt can get really, really big to become very specific and useful. But this is just kind of an example of how to do that.
Okay, so start response with the user's name. Okay, cool. So I can ask it anything, I guess. So I don't know. I'll ask some programming thing. What is the best algorithm to calculate the shortest distance? I'm guessing it's going to say Dijkstra's, but
the llama is in front of it for me.
oh, okay, here. Let me move it over. Sorry. There. Okay, now.
Do you see any logs? Like nothing is happening?
Yeah, I'm just taking a peek here. Hold on a sec. It's watching. Let me see here. I'm going to zoom down a bit, but let's see here. Let's go to the beginning. Okay, so the handler request. I'm going to put a breakpoint. Okay, now it's running. Okay.
Oh, something. Okay.
Wow. Nice.
So
I'm glad that just works.
it shouldn't take that long. You see, like it took a long time before it even logged out that it received the request. So
yeah,
I don't know, we just launched it. So maybe people kind of, like their load testing now.
yeah.
Like how can you break it,
Yeah. Oh,
So,
also
yeah.
just want to say hello to Jason in the chat. Thanks for joining, man.
It's
Okay,
not
yeah.
using
So
the pirate language much though, right? Is it?
the choice, no, it didn't seem to.
No.
I wonder if here I'll put the breakpoint in and just to see.
Yeah, maybe also like clear, because you'll be passing in old messages, so like you can also clear
the context.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's do at YOLO, and let's see. We'll ask it something like explain a linked list. Explain what a linked list is. I'm hoping for pirate chat now. Oh, weird. It's not going pirate mode, but it is answering.
Nobody knows the ways of the AI. I swear it worked for me before. So
yeah,
imagine this would have been pirate language now. This is how it should work. There is not more magic to it. So this prompt method kind of sends the message from payload message content. To the completions API with the system message prepended. And it passes in 64 the whole context of the previous messages. So you can kind of ask and follow-up questions based on prior responses. And it's using the token, which is, I think, what's really cool. So you receive this token in the header of the request, which is working for both GitHub API and the Copilot API. So there is no other token you need to configure.
I did because I've been doing a lot of prompt engineering, and it's just not picking up. Like I switched it to Ninja Turtle because when I grabbed the Blackbeard example the other day, I got it to speak like Michelangelo from the Ninja Turtles, but yeah, it's not, the prompt's not picking it up for some reason. But usually when you give it the context like that, it should do it. So
Yeah,
interesting. Well, we won't worry. I'm not too worried about it not responding as
let's
Michelangelo. Cool.
let's go into your like the open source one now. I feel like now we
Yeah.
kind of had like a baby step with the Hello
Okay.
World, and we had a little
Yeah.
bit more advanced example here. It's still
Yeah.
like
Sure.
less than 100 lines of code, I think, but this is already much more powerful and
Yeah.
safe with verification, and it's kind of showing off some of that functionalities of the SDK. And yours is now much more complex, I think.
Yeah. So like I was mentioning before, like originally this was like, oh, let's build out the open source Copilot extension on the live stream, and then I just started reading, and I just made a lot of because like I've already worked on Star Search, which is using these APIs. So basically I got really far. So I basically, yeah, it'll be more like a show and tell, I guess, at this point, but definitely, and it's obviously a proof of concept. So like, there's definitely things I wouldn't ship to production and stuff, but I'll kind of talk you through how I built it, and then I think any feedback you have would be amazing, and hopefully I can demo it as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and start off and watch. What was it? Oh, it's dev mode. Yeah, sorry. So I'm using the examples before were using Express.js. I was just like, oh, I haven't built anything with Hano.js yet, so I just decided to use Hano. But again, this gets back to what we were saying at the when the people rated the Twitch stream. But aside from the preview SDK only being in TypeScript right now, you could still build the whole app out in whatever technologies you want to, as long as it can serve requests and responses. But I'm using TypeScript, Hono.js, and yeah, let's just take a peek. I'm just going to start the port forwarding again. Okay, let's make it public. And port visibility, public. So continue. So I'm just gonna try and do side by side first, just to show OpenSauced and the extension I've built out so far. So if we go to Star Search, like I was mentioning, I'll drop a link to it again. This is kind of something we built out earlier this summer. It's kind of like RA offering. We call it Copilot, but for Git history. So right now, it's really good at, it knows a lot about your repository in terms of pull requests and issues. We have a user agent that I had started to work on, but other priorities took over. So that's kind of still in the works, but it's really good at answering these questions. And we don't we don't look at code really right now, aside from we have stuff for software bill of materials. That's a separate thing, but I think this is nice because it complements Copilot, because Copilot's good with code and stuff. There's other AI offerings too that do that kind of stuff. So that's kind of what we're focused on right now, and basically treating a repository like it's like a data set for us, because we have access to the whole GitHub events pipeline. We consume it in a time series database, and so that's how we're able to do this stuff. So, for example, if I run in Star Search, I want to find out what has my coworker Brandon Roberts worked on recently. So it's going to show a bunch of things here. And again, this chat UI like interface. So he did some releases, and then there was some improvements in the app. Now we can come over here, and let me zoom down a bit here. I'll do some show and tell first, and then we can look at the code, I think. So let's do, oh, hey, Fuzzy, good to see you back. I'm trying to remember, how do I start a new conversation? The button's not there, or, well, it doesn't matter. Okay. Oh, this is my first conversation, I guess. So, okay. So I've already registered the GitHub application. So kind of what we just walked through there, Gregor and Francis. So I'm not going to go through that again, but it's pretty much similar to what we did for the Hello World app. So I've registered it. This will eventually be on the OpenSauced org, but since it's on my own account, I couldn't use the open-sauced because that's reserved to our org. So I just called it OpenSauced POC for proof of concept. And I'm going to come here and I'll ask that question. So I'm just going to paste it over here. And all of a sudden, okay, so this is the OAuth that I had to put in place. And I don't know if this is the best way to do this, but this is how I did it. So any feedback here. Um, the reason why I did it with a login link here is because the server sent events, I'm basically giving responses that get rendered in the chat interface of Copilot. So you can generate Markdown or HTML. So I did a login link, and this is going to bring us to our production to log into OpenSauced. And then I'm going to authorize, and then I'm going to come back to kind of like the same issue we had with the OK there. So that was going to be some of my feedback too. Like you were saying, it'd be nice if you could do that OAuth flow where it just brings you back to where you were. Anyways, so let's come back here now and let's ask that question now. And so I'm logged in, and again, to what you were mentioning before, there's the GitHub auth token, and I use that as well. I basically did a rudimentary store for my session tokens. I just basically have the username, and I store the session token I get there, and it's in. Okay, Copilot didn't like something. Okay, or maybe it's my stuff. We can try again. This was working before, but of course it's a demo, so something's gonna blow up in my face. Let's see here. Give it a second. Now there's a couple of things. I do send the acknowledgement.
Event.
Francis and Gregor, and then eventually it does it. Okay, so now it's responding. Okay,
Yay.
so you're gonna see it's similar, but I've got markdown events, and this is a link to Brandon and stuff. And sometimes, because it's not deterministic, sometimes you'll get broken markdown. It just happens. But I did a bit of prompt engineering, and I said if you're ever returning like issues or pull requests, you absolutely have to return the title and the URL. And I leveraged the create references that we were talking about before.
Nice.
So I can just go to the actual issue, and then you can actually see this is something that Brandon worked on, which I think that's kind of cool. I was trying to basically leverage as much of the native stuff that the SDK was giving us. So like if we ask another thing, like what's the lottery factor of, and I can zoom this in a bit, sorry, of remix, run remix. And again, just to give some context, we star search, we have this GitHub event pipeline, GitHub events pipeline that we consume through a time series database. So we have like tons of knowledge about all your repositories that you care about. So here I'm just going to ask, what's the lottery factor of the Remix app? I used to work on the frameworks team at Netlify, so I did a lot of stuff with the frameworks. So the one difference I noticed, like between Star Search in the app and GitHub Copilot, and I'm not sure if it's a little slower, and I think that's probably because of the tunneling. I'm guessing, because I'm calling the same API, so I'm guessing that's maybe why it's a little slower. Because you'll see eventually you'll get the Copilot spinner showing up in a second. Yeah, there we go.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, and you can see how the markdown, it looks weird for a second, then it builds it. And so, but in terms of like the progress I made, like once I got my hands on the SDK, Gregor and Francis, I was like able to move really fast. And so like, and to show the difference here, there's a few things. I ignore some of our responses. So like if we go back to here and I ask the same thing, like what's the lottery factor over here? you're going to see we get this nice image. This is something that's in the app. I don't surface that in here because this is actually a React component that I'm rendering dynamically, and that's not something I can do in the context of Copilot. So basically, we have several server sent messages that come in, much like Copilot does when it's doing the UI. And I have certain types, which if it's not type content, I just ignore it for now, because we have like a type, it's called function call, and that's what helps me build these dynamic components here. But in the context of Copilot, it just doesn't make sense, at least right now. So I did a bit of prompt engineering to just say, like, because it always does give you the textual one too. Like you'll see here, it gives the textual one. It obviously looks nicer because like I've got stuff specific to our UI here, but on the Copilot side, since I can't render that nice component, I just say you must absolutely render a markdown table. And I did notice something interesting about this. So like if we come to VS Code, because like we've been looking at Copilot in the context of GitHub.com, but Copilot chat exists in VS Code as well. And if I ask that same question, so if I come here and come to, I'll move my VS Code over so it's not blocked by your cameras there. But I'm going to ask the same thing. So you're going to see here, there's file references you can get access to. For right now, it doesn't really matter for what I'm asking, but you're going to see it's going to start generating, and there's a bit of lag again, and I think it's the tunneling. I'm not positive about that, but
it might also be the stretching of Copilot integrations right now. That would be my guess.
Okay, yeah. So it's gonna, okay, internal agent error, sure. Okay, maybe I did something wrong. I'll ask again. But the thing I wanted to show here, Gregor, was I was asking you the other day, like, how do I render images in Copilot on GitHub.com? Because like I was getting the markdown, but it seemed to always just ignore it. But when I did the same question in VS Code, it actually generated the markdown images. You see here now?
Okay.
Oh, that's nice.
There's some formatting issues like this one.
Sure.
I'm using but so I think there's a difference. I don't know if that's because they're both web tech. Like, I mean, VS Code's it's all web tech there too. So I'm not sure why on GitHub.com it won't render them. But anyways, that's just something I just wanted to point out, a difference I just noticed. But
yeah,
thank you. Yeah,
good for the team, I think. I mean, like these are different projects. I think the code base is not one-to-one shared between .com, GitHub.com,
okay.
and VS Code.
Okay.
But I think they should behave the exact same way. So I would guess that rendering markdown images, it should either work in both places or in neither.
Okay. Yeah, and Diana's saying, "Wow, that's cool." So, I think it is honestly a super cool thing that Copilot can be wherever, because like it's in VS Code, it's on GitHub.com. If I were to start a code space, I'd have it there. It's like, it's in a bunch of places, which I think is super handy, because then it also keeps your conversations, which is super cool too.
Ubiquitous. I think that might be
exactly.
the word. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm very excited about Star Search. Like, as an open source maintainer, for me and all the code intelligence that OpenSauced has, and being able to go to like some of the projects I maintain and just ask, like, hey, who are like recurring contributors in the past 2 months? Like, who are candidates that I might be able to onboard to maintainers, and I don't even need to leave GitHub.com and write my scripts for that, right? I can just and that's not stuff that Copilot can do natively. That's stuff that OpenSauced can do, because you gather all this data and you enhance it and you make it accessible. And I don't need to switch back between the OpenSauced website and GitHub.com. Instead, I can just kind of stay in the context. And also ask questions in context of the repository or the organization I am in right now. So I think I was always excited to get a Copilot extension by OpenSauced. I'm really looking forward to use that myself.
Yeah, I'm hoping to, like, obviously this is a proof of concept, and I'll show you some of the code. We still have some time. Just there's a couple things in the chat. So Diana was asking, are the images SVGs? I could see that being a security thing. In my particular case, Diana, I'm just using the GitHub avatars, so they're the regular PNGs. But yeah, you're right about SVGs, because I think you can inject JavaScript into the SVGs and do all nefarious stuff. And and Fuzzy in the chat's making a bit of a joke, saying, like, because we were saying Copilot's everywhere, he's like, even in the bathroom. Anyways, sorry. I digress. I digress. We'll try and keep it clean here. But yeah. So, but to your point, Gregor, like you were asking, like, about like who's worked on this over the past 2 months, like you could totally ask, like, let me see, what's the question I had before. Had it in. Okay, well, I'll write this one for the moment. But like, who's been working on security in Dino, for example? So Dino, from the folks at Dino, a newer JavaScript runtime. Again, there's that delay. Yeah, I'd be curious to see where that delay is, Gregor. I haven't had a chance to dig in too much yet, but
While we wait for the response, I wanted to share an ergonomic tip for folks who are using these Copilot extensions. When you open up Copilot chat, you want to make sure that your message contains the at symbol and the app name at the beginning,
okay.
and then your message. Because if you don't do that, then your message will just be routed to the regular Copilot chat. So,
Oh,
um,
okay, yeah, that's
yeah,
a good
because
call.
you can't say, "Oh, tell me about security contributors in Dino at npm sauced
Oh, okay, okay,
POC," right? So, yeah, just something for the audience to keep in mind
okay.
when building and testing. So, all right. So,
Cool,
what
cool.
do we get for results?
Yeah, so again, similar to kind of stuff Gregor's curious about. It's like, I don't have to go looking through pull requests or issues. I'm just like, who's working on security stuff in Dino? And, it might not be all of the issues or pull requests, but like it gives a pretty decent list here. Like fixed lockdown, because like Dino they lock down the permissions. And so you have to explicitly like ask for certain permissions to run. So somebody was working on that. And then, yeah, it looks like, yeah, permissions, like, so I thought that was kind of cool. Like, I haven't even gone into Dino yet, and I can at least get a glimpse of like, oh, here's some security things that people are working on, or that were open, So, anyways, oh yeah, Gregor just dropped a link to server sent events, which is a good call, because we've been talking about them, but it'd be good for people to just see those. So let's go ahead and drop that in the chat over there, and I'll just drop it over on YouTube as well. Cool.
Sorry, I
Yeah,
was in the chat a while ago. This is a little out of context now, but
yeah, it's okay. I I've got lots of windows going on, but yeah. So like, so that's one question. But you could also say, like, I don't know, like, who's, like, I could add, like, I obviously know you've worked on the preview SDK, but I could say who's worked on the I just got to get the URL of the SDK. Hold on a sec.
I was gonna say you should calculate the lottery factor for the previous DK
Yeah.
and see how real time it is. I did want to be mindful. I'm good to go until the top of the hour. I wanted to make sure you all are both good to go to the top of the hour or sooner. Yeah, just want to be
Yeah,
on the same
I'm
page.
still good. I think we can definitely wrap up in at the top of the hour.
Okay, sounds good.
As much as I enjoyed talking to both of you, I have a feeling after 2 hours you're like, yeah, I think I've seen enough, Nick. So
No,
I'm
I
just
love it. I love that you're using the SDK and making something very non-trivial and awesome with it. So thank you for having us on, really.
Oh no, cool. I appreciate you all coming on. So the cool thing about here is this is a new project. The context I should give about, like I was saying, we treat all the repositories like a data set. Like each one is its own data set, and we literally have up to like if you opened up a PR or an issue, like anywhere between 2 and 5 minutes, it'll start showing up in our data. So, and like obviously this is a newer project, but it's been around for a few weeks, I think you said, Gregor. But you can see here, okay, here's something recent. So you created the dream code. You created this features for the verification keys, and then if you want to see more about it, this is something I just generate at the end. But you can go to the you can go to the page, and then you can see more about it. And this is where you can basically just get more information about the repository. So we can see
Nice.
like YOLO coders. So like obviously it's a new project, so like there's some stuff that didn't go through PRs at the beginning, or maybe there still is. It's not. I'm not calling that out to point fingers. I'm just saying it's a pretty normal thing. Like when you have a new project, um, it's potentially concerning longer term if somebody's always just pushing to like the default branch without going through the PR flow. And that's just something to surface. Like even the proof of concept I'm working on right now, I'm just pushing because it makes no sense where I'm just trying to test something out to go through that whole flow of pull requests. Like it'll definitely hit a certain point where I'll be like, okay, I've got this in a good place. Let's make this a starting point, and then let's enable like our branch protection and all that. Um, but yeah, so then you can come here and you can see like what's been going on, and good news for your project, it's very approachable apparently. So people who are interested in contributing to it, it's definitely approachable.
Oh,
The the
nice.
lottery,
That's a win. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah,
Sorry. Yeah.
no, I was just gonna say, so the lottery factor is very high, but don't don't think of that as a negative thing. Like it's just more like information for you because it's a new project. It makes sense that like both of you have been doing a lot of work in it, so it's normal that it's going to be very high. You know, given this is a GitHub project, maybe in like 2 years, if it's always only Gregor working on it, then that could, again, it's just information, but that could be a signal to somebody to say like, you know what, why don't we get some more people working with Gregor on this, and it's it it's hard to, not hard, but showing this information, a lot of times people treat them as scores, and it's not, you shouldn't treat it like that. It's just like it's information, and the context matters about what you're looking at
Mm,
too,
mm,
so
mhm.
but anyways, I digress. I did want to show you a bit of the code, and then I think we could probably wrap up around then. And like, if you had some suggestions about what I could improve, maybe it is open source. I'll drop a link to it after. It'll be in the recording too. But if we go to the main part here, and I'm just going to close most things here just so I can get as much real estate as possible. So I'm using, I know Node.js has, you can use the env file now, you can pass it in, but I had some problems with TSX, which is what I'm using. So I just went with .env. Again, it's proof of concept, but I'm leveraging a few of the things from the SDK. So the ACK event, the done, the errors, the references event, the text event, because the text event one's pretty crucial. Excuse me. And then the get user message, which gets you the current prompt. Um, and so this is where you go to after you install the app. It just says welcome to the extension. If you need to log in, basically it goes through that flow for OAuth. Um, the the username is supposed to be in there. If it's not, I generate an event that I return to the, so Copilot will process this as an error event, and then otherwise, if we're good to go there, then it just goes through the whole OAuth flow. If for some reason an error occurs signing in, I again just report an error event. And then here's the callback URL. And this is where basically we're using Supabase. So basically I get the session. If there's an error, again, error event. But the main thing right now, and this is again very rudimentary because it's proof of concept, but I basically have a map. It's just the key is a string, the value is a string. So your username is the key, and the access token I get from Supabase is what I use to connect to our APIs. and that's just basically how I look it up. Again, I would not ship that to production, but for just testing out stuff, seemed to work well. And then so the when we post to slash, this is the URL we configured over in the GitHub app under the Copilot section, which is we put as the root of the app. So anytime you interact with Copilot, it's gonna post to this endpoint here. And as far as I know, Copilot just always sends this X GitHub token header. And again, I'm just doing some error handling. If it doesn't exist, I just stop. This is definitely where I should be validating the payloads and stuff like you were talking about, Gregor. So that's something I'll definitely need to look into. After that, I've got the token, so I'm using Octokit, and I just get the user. It's really just to get the username, and then out of the token store, which is the map there, I just get the API token, and then I'm able to basically make my requests to our endpoints, which it's down here. So like this is the current message is the prompt I get. That's like the question I asked, like what's the lottery factor? Again, this is using something from the SDK. And at this point, this is OpenSauced specific. So the way things work in OpenSauced is when you go and start a new conversation with Star Search, we have to create a new thread. And we do that first. And then, so I get a thread ID back. If things fail, I just mention that it failed. Otherwise, I stream out the event, the acknowledge event, the text event, and then the done event. If I need to log in, that's if things go wrong. But if we go to the happy path here, so I've got this Star Search thread ID, and then I basically have two functions that are, we don't have an SDK right now. We're going to build one at some point, but basically these two functions just call our endpoints. So I get the Star Search stream, and this is essentially what we're going to iterate over, which is the stream of server sent events. And so then we go from there. So again, if there's an error, I'll report it. Otherwise, if we go down to the happy path, basically I'm doing similar to what I do in the OpenSauced app. I get the reader and I start decoding it. And then I just loop through it until it's done. There's a bit of magic, not magic, but there's a few things I do here. Once it's done reading, I've basically collected a list of all the references. So like issues and pull requests, I'll know their title and their URL, and that's how I'm able to output those references at the end if they exist. And then I'm pretty much done. And I do some manipulation of for our stuff, because when I make the call to our Star Search API, I'm getting server sent events, but I can't send the direct server sent events to Copilot because they don't match up. So what I'm doing right now, because I only really care about textual content from ours, is I'm basically just filtering out. So like if the payload from our API is of type content, the server sent event, then I basically add it to the response. And there's some regex cleanup because just the way we handle things at the moment, but that's just me making it work in Copilot. I think going forward, if we continue working on this, I'm probably going to send a flag to the API to say, hey, you're in Copilot versus you're in the app, just so we can handle things differently, so that I don't have to do some manipulation. But that's kind of essentially it. And I got to say, like, again, hats off to both of you for the the SDK, because I was able to really move fast with this. Like at first I was like, maybe I'll get it to output something from our API, and then all of a sudden I pretty much had it all working. So just kudos to both of you for and the other contributors on the project.
Well, thank you. That's very nice to hear.
Cool. I guess we can just switch over to chat view here. I guess as we kind of wrap up, I think Fran's having a bit of trouble with his camera, but yeah, I guess as we wrap up, so just to kind of go over high level what we covered. Copilot extensions are in public beta now. I'll drop a link to that again. Also, drop a link to the SDK, which is still in preview. It's only TypeScript right now, but obviously works with JavaScript too. PRs are definitely welcome. Issues. I definitely want to take a peek at some of it because I'd like to contribute to it as well, I think. Um, and for the folks that were asking in the chat earlier on, it's only in TypeScript right now, but people are welcome to look at what's there. And I'd say like file an issue, do a proof of concept of if you want to create it in another language, just see where you can go with it. I think it'd be super cool. And it's early days for the whole Copilot extension ecosystem. So I think it's just be interesting stuff to tackle. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to mention, Gregor.
No, I mean, like other than contributing code, like a great way to contribute is also contribute an example. Like that's something we started based on a contribution from
Okay.
external contributors. So we have this examples folder, which I really like when projects have, and we only have 2 or 3 right now. So we could add more. And there's Ream code in there, which is like another way to just kind of read through it and contribute back. It's not code at all. It's just kind of saying, hey, this is a great DX. I want that, or I want something different.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And I also, if someone wants to write an SDK for, let's say, Go, file an issue, like find your people, and then we can also link, to these other SDKs in other languages right from the README for other people.
Okay,
to
awesome.
find that more easy. Yeah, Francis.
Cool. Yeah, I don't know if I think his camera's he could be having internet issues. I'm guessing, but
I see him. You want to say something, or Francis?
Oh wait, sorry, I was on a different screen. It doesn't look like you're moving on the other screen, but I see the live one. Sorry, Francis. I thought you were frozen this whole time.
He can't hear us, unfortunately. We cannot hear you either.
Okay, yeah, it's I guess you lost your audio. I'm not sure what's going on. It's okay.
Maybe it's time to wrap it up,
Yeah. We can pretend. So he's very motivated and excited and cool. Yeah, the other thing is I'm just going to go ahead and drop the link to the repository for the Copilot extension proof of concept I've been working on, if folks want to check that out. I'm definitely going to continue working on it, see how far I can go with it. But yeah, just wanted to say super thankful for both you taking time out of your day. I know this is all new stuff. Gregor, like you said, you just kind of jumped into Copilot land very recently, but honestly, it looks like you ramped up pretty quickly there, being able to crank out the SDK with the others. And yeah, no, just been a lot of fun, and I'm really happy with the progress I was able to make. So cool. Awesome. Well, I guess we can wrap up here. Just want to say thanks to everybody in the chat today. And the other thing I'll mention is it's in the schedule if you just go to nikiT.live, but I'm going to be hanging out with Drew Powers next week. Drew is the co-creator of Astro. I hung on a live stream with him last year. We were talking about just color and design systems, but we're going to be looking at a few things next week. He's going to be talking about how he got into open source. We might talk about build tooling in the front end space. So I'm pretty excited for that. Looking forward to chatting with him again. Yeah, and that's pretty much it, folks. Thanks so much for hanging. And Francis and Gregor, if you don't mind just staying on for 1 second, and everybody else, we will see you next week.